G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Wanda Toro Turini from Ketchwords.com, based in Lancaster, USA. I think that's just outside of Boston, well, not too far from Boston. Thanks for your time today, Wanda.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Jessie on your team from Ketchwords reached out and thought you might be a good guest for us.
Yeah, she's a smart lady. Yes, I'm very appreciative. She knows how to pick them right. So I appreciate her working on trying to help us spread the message.
We'll tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So right now, my focus is on Ketchwords.com. So Ketchwords is it's a texting technology that allows speakers and experts to share content with their audience, right? So my mission is to, one, try and connect more people with experts, because I think very often when we want to do hard things in our lives or in our businesses, we wait too long and we try and figure things out ourselves, right? So experts and connecting with experts has been like a huge accelerant in my personal life and my business. So I love doing that. And then long ago, I invented this texting technology that allowed me, when I was speaking and sharing my expertise, to better serve those people that were in the audience. Like, it was so frustrating to see people like taking pictures of my slides and taking notes, and they had the glisten in their eye and I didn't know who they were, right? And so I figured, I'm like, well, I wonder if I offered them additional content. It could be my slides, it could be a guide or some other additional piece of content, then I'd be able to kind of suss out, like, who are those people in the audience, those anonymous fans, and unveil them, right? And so I created the technology. I started testing it out when I was running a consulting firm, and I got people texting. Like, it was like all of these leads that were in the audience that I never was aware of. Yeah. And through that process, then I realized, instead of the consulting stuff, I want to make money helping people use this technology to build their businesses. So that's what I focus on now. And then I also just recently launched a podcast called Rocket Fuel, where I get to feature experts and they use the technology on the podcast. So every episode has a catchword and all that jazz.
Yeah. No, brilliant idea, because clearly if someone is taking photos of your slides, they're engaged, you've got them, and you just need to get their details and keep that conversation going afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see, the thing is, Troy, when you're, and especially if you're an impact driven expert or entrepreneur or founder, right? So there's a subset of us that love to share our message, love to teach, and we get jazzed, we get energized by that interaction with the audience. But what happens is, if you step off that stage, you get, yay, your applause, your accolades, and you're like, woohoo, and you walk off and you have no leads, then at a certain point, you view it as extracurricular.
Yeah.
You view it as, oh, if I have time, I'm going to go speak here or there, whatever, because you spend time preparing your slides, you spend time possibly traveling. Even when you weren't traveling, it's time, right? So too often we view it as extracurricular, but it's actually the fastest way that people can, one, get to know what your expertise is, and two, get to know who you are as a personality, right? So why are you going to take this rich experience and then hope that somebody connects with you on social? And by the way, they're one of all the other followers that are on social. So there's no way for you to segment or differentiate how they got to know you, right? And so with a catchword, not only are you offering great value, but you also get to segment and know that, okay, this subscriber list like a catchword, our strategy is a catchword is only used when people have had the opportunity to know you through an appearance. So whether it's a podcast guesting opportunity, in person speaking, virtual speaking, right? So now you have this time with them. And so if you have that subscriber list, you know that this is a sub segment of people that have actually heard your story. They know who you are. So you want to treat them. Yeah, you want to treat them differently. Exactly. So I get very, very excited, if you can tell.
hadn't noticed. And what about the rise of QR codes? Is that a threat that speakers would just use that, say, here's my QR code to get more information?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I conceptualized this in 2007, launched it in 2009. It failed because big companies were like, oh, only children text, by the way, right? So there's a whole story, around that. And then around 2011 was when QR codes actually started to kind of be way more popular as well. And so I will say at that point I started sweating a little bit. I'm like, but QR codes are just not very user friendly. People get confused with QR codes, and there's also not an opportunity to reconnect easily with somebody, right? So when somebody texts a catchword and they subscribe, then you have the opportunity to actually reconnect with them and send a text plus an email and attachment, right? So what's unique about a catchword is it's not just a texting interface. When somebody texts, it's a trigger to receive a text, an email, and an attachment. And we purposely did that because when people receive emails alone with like a link to a PDF, they don't open it as much. But if they receive an email with an attachment, I go like this for the paperclip, right? It gets prioritized in our minds. So when we were using it in corporate, where let's say there was a conference and every speaker was using a catchword, right? You come back from the conference and there's tons of emails that you're behind on. But when you see the emails with an attachment, you inherently want to open it. There's something there, and you know that there's something there. So we purposely designed it that way. So a QR code doesn't deliver all of that nuance, and it's way easier for an audience to use. In addition to anything that's audio, a radio or podcast interview, a QR code doesn't serve you, right? So when we work with clients, we work on it as like a strategy, as a tool in their appearance or visibility strategy, right? So that wherever they show up, they use it as a measuring tool.
And it's less steps as well for a QR code or asking them to follow you on socials or go to a web page. It's just pull out your phone, text this number. I'm assuming it's 5 or 6 digits in the US, and then start getting information. It's much less friction for the person to join.
Exactly. But when I first developed it, it was visionary. I had a vision of how people would use it, how it could potentially replace paper brochures. Actually, that was one of my first thoughts of using it, not for an audience. It was first there. And then I started using it with my consulting firm as I was speaking in front of large audiences. And then it kind of developed there where, I mean, even for today, I see any sort of educational TV show where they're like, oh, go to the website to learn more about whatever. It's like, no, just give me a thing, that I could text for. And then, actually that I was interested in that topic. And so there's a lot of upside opportunity. I would say it's still in its infancy, even though I officially launched it in 2009, it was too early for the market. And then when we launched it for speakers in 2019 was when we really, my husband and I really decided like we're going to commit to doing this. And we prepared to launch it officially in March of 2020 to speakers that were speaking in front of live audiences.
Holy shit.
Yes. So literally the week that we had the national shutdown announced was when I launched, and I saw my Facebook ads. There was like all this activity and then nothing.
Cliff.
And I literally called the Facebook contact saying, what happened? Did we do something wrong? There's no, and they're like, no, everything's fine. Of course, nobody's interested in listening to a webinar about like optimizing your speaking engagements. Like, we're in a national shutdown. And so 2020 to, I mean, even this year has been the year of recovery, but 2020 and 21 were really, really very, very difficult.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. Just a couple of questions. Can catchwords be used outside of the US?
Yes. So we actually launched that. That was a good thing that came out of COVID, because we started focusing on serving people that were podcast guesting or doing virtual presentations, digital, right? And so we realized that exposed them to international audiences, and we had to do something about it. So now somebody can text a catchword on a US short code and via WhatsApp.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, do you want to maybe tell the audience how they can test it out?
Sure. Well, what I'd love to do is say, if anybody is a speaker and they're choosing visibility as part of their strategy, what I put together was a guide on how to transform your talk into a lead generating machine. Now, where this comes from is when I started using a catchword, 25% of my audience would text. And I thought that was fantastic, right? And then over like a 2+ year period, because I'm super nerdy, I was analyzing, can I do better? And so I got consistently to the point of 76% of my audience texting. Wow. Now, the catchword, and this was consistently. So the catchword was my mechanism of being able to measure my impact. Right, measure how I was creating a response in the audience, but I changed my behavior, my strategy, and approach to do that. So what I did is I put the guide together on those approaches so that people can start really looking at their stuff differently. And all you need to do is text leads, LEADS, to 411-321 if you're in the US. So the phone number or the short code is 411-321. Leads is the message, and the system will trigger and ask you for your email address if we don't have it. If you're outside of the US, you can actually use WhatsApp, but the phone number, which I believe in WhatsApp, you have to make it a contact, I believe, but it's 1-909-741-1321. And I will give that to you as well to put in the show notes.
Yep.
But if you go 1-909-741-1321, the message is leads. Provide your email address when it's triggered, and you will get it right in your email inbox.
So you don't need to put a plus in front of the one for the US?
You know what? Some people were saying yes, and some people were saying no. I don't think it hurts you to do the plus one.
Yeah, maybe do the plus and
do the plus one.
Yep. Great. How did you start out?
Well, I have a doctorate in pharmacy. So I was a healthcare professional. I was a critical care and emergency medicine pharmacist, actually. So totally not anything to do with this. But that's why I call myself nerdy, because I'm very analytical by nature. But I'm also an oddball because I perform in musical theater. I sing with a band. So this is why I use my hands a lot, and I'm very expressive. And so I had this like odd combination. But when I was working for the healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry for a while, I just was the person that had new ideas all the time of like how to make something better. And I realize now I'm a visionary. It's a thing that I have, but it was very annoying in the corporate world. Even when corporations, I was fortunate, I worked for a company that actually was proud to call themselves innovative, but I just had too many ideas. It wasn't good for a corporation. They still couldn't catch up. So they were very supportive of me. And I was on leadership track and stuff, but there was always something grinding. Like I just wasn't fitting in. And I finally realized I have way too many ideas, and I feel like I'm not fulfilled. Even though I was making a lot of money, my accountant actually was like, "You are crazy. Why are you leaving this plush job?" And I said, "There's something more for me to do." So I left, and I started doing consulting work in a lot of different things and just exploring different ideas that I had. And that was good and bad, because I learned, it maybe took me a little too long to learn, that you really need to focus on one thing
Yep, learnt
so
that the
that you
hard
can
way.
do,
I've got the
right?
t-shirt. Mm.
And it's hard, because when we're visionary and we're inspired people, we have all these ideas and there's all this possibility, and we don't have the framework of a corporation or a boss or whatever to say, stay within this box, right? And then we dilute ourselves. And so I've been in that stage where, I mean, when I was doing my consulting firm, I talk about, oh, this technology, this, just on the side, I developed this texting platform. I couldn't keep my brain off. And I'm at the stage where I'm still split, but I'm starting to like bring it down, right? I have the technology platform Ketchwords, but then we also launched a visibility agency called Rocket Fuel, because we realized that if people didn't use the technology well, if there wasn't good strategy, then they weren't going to reap the benefits. And so we said, well, we'll keep it separate, because some people can just use the technology, be happy. But for other people that really want to build a strategy around their visibility and accountability, because sometimes it's hard to show up when things are bad at home, you don't feel right, the lighting's not right for a woman, like, my lipstick, my makeup's not right. So to have some accountability around that is really valuable. And so we launched Rocket Fuel, but I'm in this state, I'm thinking in 2023, how do I focus? Because I'm not going to do justice to either of them.
Yep.
If I split my time, and I'm figuring it out. I don't have the answer yet.
Right. And what year did you jump from corporate?
Say again?
Sorry, what year did you jump from corporate?
In 2005.
Okay, so you did some consulting for about 4 years before you started up Ketchwords, 2009.
Yes. And I continued the consulting work for, it was heavy for around 10 years.
Yeah.
And then there was this transition, because it was making really good money. That's the other thing, right? You have one thing, well, that's making really good money, so I want to keep that going, and I want to start this, but then you can't effectively start this because the other thing is holding you back. What was interesting is the consulting work was very analytical.
Yeah.
That was, for decades, I was in my analytical mindset, but Catchwords was truly visionary. I had to be able to help people see what it would look like. And when I was doing both, I couldn't do either well. Either I was very angry at my consulting work, right?
Yeah.
I would be resentful, like this was a prison that I created for myself.
Yep.
Meanwhile, it was making a lot of money. Or I get to be visionary. And so my husband and I had to make that decision to start switching over and start exploring how I can really fit into my visionary role and represent what Catchwords can actually
Yes.
do for us.
And the consulting was just you on your own, or you had team members?
No, I had team members. So I had a team of up to 13 people on the consulting side.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And in 2009, when you started Ketchwords, how old were you then?
I was, now I have to do math. I'm 51 right now. So what does that make me? I'm 51 right now.
51, so you're 38. You're 38.
Yes, there you go.
Right.
Thank you.
I've had enough coffee today.
I know. I'm like, it's too late for me.
Yeah.
It's not morning. It's the end of my day.
Do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of Catchwords over the 15 years now?
Yeah. And honestly, it's not nearly enough. We just started scraping 500,000 now after coming out of COVID, and it's disappointing, and it sounds silly to say it's disappointing, but to me, it just represents that we're not serving enough people.
Yep.
Right. More people should be having a catchword, and we're even exploring different pricing models. Do we want to charge people just based on leads instead of the upfront cost of setting it up, because they don't know. You see, it's different when people don't, there's nothing else like it. So people don't understand what that experience is. So when we say, oh, it's $500 to set it up for you, then they don't know what they're receiving and then afterwards they're like, wow, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. But you have to get somebody to that point to see the vision of it. And so if we can make it ubiquitous, this is kind of a strategy, right? In some cases, you might want to drop it, make it easier for people to just use it and test it so that it's seen out in the marketplace more. And then start helping people with strategizing, optimizing, et cetera. So I'm kind of, pulling back the curtain a little bit and saying it's not easy when you don't have a model. It's a completely new, I couldn't compare myself to other texting technologies. It has so much greater impact than that. And if I did, then people would accidentally think that it's like another texting platform, and it's not, because we merge everything together. So, and I would say I was also very stuck on making sure that I was working with people that were impact driven, because to me, it's a way of extending the impact to the audience. So I have a little bit of an emotional connection to what it could be.
Wanda, I still think $500,000 a year in recurring revenue is still excellent. So, but I was going to ask, so it sounds like you've got a messaging challenge, and I've just gone through this. We're relaunching our website again for the third or fourth fucking time in, I don't know, 4 months. All thanks to one book that I read a few months ago. Have you read the Donald Miller Story Brand book?
No.
Oh, definitely read that. I just had a quick look at your website. I think you'd really get a lot out of that. And his podcast is great as well. I'll send you through a link after to the book.
Thank you.
It's all about clarifying your message. And one of his key sayings is, you confuse, you lose. So really getting tight on your copy and on your messaging. And there's some great case studies in his podcast, particularly about just minor tweaks to the website that has seen 300 to 500 or even 700% increase in leads. Because of a few changes you make. So it's really good stuff. I'll shoot that video.
I accept it very gratefully. Thank you. Yes, but this is why, for example, it's very good for people to use their visibility to go out there, tell their story, see what resonates, right? Capture that. That's what's important as well. What I love about doing the rocket fuel work is that I'm that person that's asking the client, oh, so you had a speaking engagement. So let's talk about it. How many people were in the room? How many people texted your thing? Oh, you only got 40%. Okay. Why is that? Tell me. Oh, well, I forgot to mention it here or there, or this is what and so they start analyzing what they did so that they can do it better. But without that, they would just go on and say, well, a lot of people clapped. Right. And so that's exciting as well. And this is where there's a little bit of that message mix up, to tell you the truth. I speak a lot about the strategy, right? And yet that is not catchwords. Catchwords is literally, it's just lead generation. If you just look at that like that, it's lead generation using texting, texting for content. But the strategy makes it so much more than that. It makes it an extension of your impact. It makes it all this other stuff. But when I started and I was working, I'm thinking of one particular healthcare company that wanted to use the technology, and I offered my strategy at that point, and they were like, no, we know what we're going to offer, et cetera. Right? So they used it, and nobody texted. Zero. And I was like, oh, and I knew that's what was going to be the case, because what they were offering it was all about them. It wasn't anything that was useful for the actual audience. But their response was, you see, chiropractors don't text.
What's that saying? Causality. It's like the number of sunny days are related to the number of shark attacks or something. I can't remember.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was literally like, chiropractors don't text. That's crazy. So they didn't even revisit the situation to recognize that it wasn't the technology, it was their strategy that was flawed. And I think I was a little scarred by that experience in saying I didn't want to unleash the technology to people that were going to just not use it well because they were going to blame the technology and not recognize that they could do better.
Yep.
So that's why I believe our growth was a little slower, because I've been a little bit more selective with who it is that we're going to work with, because I consider them the ambassadors, right? They're the first examples of how to use it. And I want people to get the right impression of what it could be.
Great. And we always like to ask number of full-time equivalent team members you started with 13 years ago and how many you have at the moment.
So right now we're at 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're trying to come out of the hole and be well, but I will say that but we probably have 4 additional contractors that are part-time that help us.
6 full-time equivalent then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
I would say that's fair.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Not yet. To be honest, not yet. I feel like I don't want what I want to get out of and what success would look like. So let's say moving forward, what I'm looking forward to instead of getting away from, what I'm looking forward to is a situation where I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay my team and how I'm going to pay myself, right? That where the engine is sustainable and consistent enough. So I'm getting tired of like exploring and trying again. And we've all been, I'm sure, in that spot where it's just exhausting and you just want the consistency. And so what's interesting is when I help other entrepreneurs, I can see that for them. But the brain surgeon can't perform brain surgery on themselves, right?
No.
And so it's getting to the point where I have the right coaches that will help kind of provide me with that same medicine and see how we could create that sustainable machine. So to me, that would be successful when I'm not worried.
Yep.
And I think that when I started becoming an entrepreneur, it was almost something that was accepted. Like, oh, well, it's a risky thing. And, you're going to live your life like this. And now I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm an older mom and I don't want to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
Simply enough. Right. And so that's my goal. My goal of success is to not feel that I'm worried, that I've empowered the team. We have the systems and the structure where if I have to step away, if something happens, that it continues to move forward.
Yep.
That will be success for me.
Great. Yeah. So that answers the next question. What does success look like to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Ooh. Actually, to put yourself in front of your audience as quickly as possible. I think speaking and teaching is a great opportunity. I specifically like to formulate this workshop style presentation. And I even did it earlier this year where I would give my workshop. I would say, hey guys, my goal is to put together an evergreen webinar. So I'm inviting you live to hear my webinar. I would like for you to take notes. And then afterwards, I'm going to ask you what worked, what didn't work for you, what really resonated, what was missing, all of these things. Now, that was a very interesting experience because people felt very connected to me and they felt like they were part of my journey. And I was upfront to say, look, I'm going to give you a webinar and then I'm going to ask you for feedback afterwards. So this is something that I kind of discovered this year that worked really well. I think I did it informally prior to that, but I would recommend trying that out and inviting people. Literally, even if there are two or three people that come, you create deeper relationships with them and they actually will give you feedback. Just make sure you're inviting your people, your ideal prospect.
And how did you fund the business?
I primarily funded it from my own bootstrapping. And then when I got to launching the bigger version of Ketchwords, it started out with loans. And then it continued with loans through COVID. It was first, we actually first, my husband and I first took loans out of our 401k. So we wanted to invest in ourselves. And then we had a plan. We decided to get some smaller loans to fund the Facebook ads, and we felt fine with that. And then, to be honest with you, then all hell broke loose. And luckily, we had the emergency loans that the U.S. provided. But that wasn't necessarily a savior, because now we have to pay those loans back.
Yeah, of course. So you haven't taken investors on?
No investors. What my plan is for next year is to actually split, because everything is under one company right now. So to split Ketchwords into its own company, because I think somebody else would do it more justice than I, to be honest with you. I think somebody who knows how to, so anybody who's listening, somebody who really knows how to sell a SaaS product that is a monthly subscription, high volume product, would probably be able to create a better plan for that, because I got emotionally stuck on like how you use the technology, right? So that would be a better thing. And then Rocket Fuel can work in tandem to say for people who want that extra boost and increase their effectiveness, then they can come on over to Rocket Fuel. So that's my plan in 2023, to split the two and to search for the partner there. And that, I believe, for Ketchwords, there's definitely an opportunity for an investor.
Yeah, great. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I think I would go in the direction of what I'm finally doing with Rocket Fuel, which is on the business coaching and consulting side of things. But I also love featuring experts and helping them tell their story better than they can tell themselves. So my vision is to build the podcast more, and then to go and create a TV show called Rocket Fuel, so that the community, society in general, realizes all of these wonderful things that people are doing, right? As entrepreneurs, we tend to be a little bit more connected with all of the niches of things of that people are doing, but who knows that there's a physical therapist that that specializes in women that are over 40 who want to get back to their athletic state again, right? It's like such a crazy niche. But once somebody knows, maybe that person who was a skier and had kids and feels like they're out of shape now has somebody that knows their story and can help them and connect with them. And so if I can create a larger platform to share these stories of all these wonderful entrepreneurs, I think I would be in my happy place.
All right. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
It's hard for me to pick most stressful. I think that it was when I had to let go of, I laid off my consulting team because we made the decision to, one, start Ketchwords, and to start a family, and it was hurting my health. And it was hard because the consulting business was so built on me as the central subject matter expert. But I was starting a family late in my life. I was 40, and everybody was telling me, you have to reduce your stress, etc. And I had to make that decision, and we had a wonderful team, and we were making a lot of money. And my husband, I mean, I had to lay off my husband.
How did that
It
go
was
around the
funny.
dinner table?
Yeah. I mean, he was like, you need to lay me off first.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean? He's like, you need to lay me off first. Everybody needs to understand that, like, none of us are good. We're starting from scratch. That was very hard. There were a lot of tears, and I felt very like I disappointed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was a hard time for me because I wasn't able to conceive, and I felt like a failure in my personal life as well. So
It would have been a
so
really
that
shitty time, Wanda.
say again.
That would have been a really shitty time.
A really, really shitty time.
Mm.
And the just feeling like you came from a good thing, and you see that a good thing is coming, but I had to put my company to the side and do the bare minimum to preserve my health, and it was very frustrating. I will say my feelings at that point were, I remember screaming at towards my husband, not at him, but he said, Wanda, you need to choose.
Yeah.
5 years from now, do you want a family or a successful business?
Yeah.
And I screamed, why do I have to choose one? Like, tears pouring from my face. And I realized that at that moment, I was always kind of playing the corporate game, the boys game. I never was supportive of saying, well, for a woman, it's different. For a woman, it's different. And at that moment, I realized I actually had to incubate this human.
Yes.
And it was different. And I was really upset about it. And I had to release that to be able to have two beautiful, healthy children.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
There's two. My emotional and energetic wellness has been critical, and my acceptance of what is. So releasing expectations. It's one thing to be ambitious, but it's another thing to hold on to that expectation so much that you can't see any other opportunity ahead of you. My father always said, he's still alive, but he always says, keep your eye on the carrot. Since I was little, keep your eye on the carrot. So it's that little donkey with the carrot in front of them, and just keep focus. And that was his intention. And then one day I had a coach, maybe around 7-8 years ago, I had a coach that said, do you realize what that also tells you? When the donkey is keeping their eye on the carrot, they're not seeing anything else.
Yeah.
So you were using it as motivation, but also you're not enjoying the journey at all. And you're also not seeing an alternative. And so I had to take what really propelled me, this mantra that he taught me, but also realize that subconsciously it was preventing me from enjoying the journey and from also seeing other options.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I'm not experiencing it right now, but when my consulting firm grew very quickly, it was creating our employee guide, our handbook, and creating rules like what you're allowed to wear in the office. And I thought, this is ridiculous, until somebody literally came into the office in their pajamas. And I said, what? And somebody said, what, did you just roll out of bed? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is why I have to create this guide. Like, I thought it was a total waste of time. Why am I even bothering? It's like, it just felt so restrictive. And then I said, well, it's because of that guy. And that same guy came to, this is really funny. He came into a team meeting in a conference room wearing flip-flops, which I was fine with. I said flip-flops were fine, but I didn't think that they would be the flip-flops that he wore inside the ocean. And he came to the office, and literally one of the team members was like, what is smelling in here? And they were like, you take off those flip-flops and put them outside in the conference room. So that part I didn't like, because you kind of think like, oh, everybody's going to think like you, and everybody's going to have, and so it helped me refine the hiring process too, to figure out what my cultural pillars are, right? What is important, and to recognize that some of these rules, there's some value to it. So somebody doesn't come in with stinky flip-flops.
Yeah, well, he sounds like the dude from the Big Lebowski. Very
similar.
Very very laconic.
And you know what? He was a great worker. Was a great worker. But the issue was that now you have an outlier of people are like, why does this guy get to do this? And at a certain point, it created a flexibility, like, oh, I can do this, so I can do that. And now the more and more rules started getting broken. And it actually was toxic for the work environment. So something simple like that was a symptom of other things, right? And I didn't realize it then, but it resulted in a very bad departure, let's say.
Right. What do you love most about growing a small business?
Potential and vision. And I love when I see people in their zone of genius, when somebody says, I really love this. And I get to be the facilitator of that. I really enjoy that.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
That I am a visionary, and that if I stay in my role as a visionary, then I will be of greatest service to the company and to my clients. And so being nerdy and thinking I could figure out these things, or I could play around with that software or whatever, it wasn't serving everybody as effectively. And so actually sitting comfortably in that role has really been a big transformation for me.
Ironically, have you read the book Rocket Fuel by Jenna Wickman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That was transformational for me when I realized I was a good integrator. Like when I was doing my consulting work, we literally created systems and all of that stuff. But when I took that test, I was 92% visionary and 40-something% integrator. And what I love about that test in that book is that it's not about what you're capable of. What it was saying is inherently who you are. Right. Innate. You are a visionary. And that was actually the trigger for me. And when I named Rocket Fuel, this Rocket Fuel, it wasn't related to that Rocket Fuel. This is ROCKIT, as in rocket music. But yeah, that's an excellent book.
Is that not something you could do with Ketchwords next year, is to find an integrator, particularly on the marketing side, and partner up with?
Yes, exactly.
Great.
Exactly.
The number one habit
you are on point.
Yeah. This isn't my first radio, as my daughter, my 10-year-old, almost 10-year-old daughter says. A couple of months ago, she said something to me, and I was being a smart ass, said, Mags, this isn't my first rodeo. And she never obviously heard the word rodeo before. Next day, she threw it back at me in my face and said, Dad, this isn't my first radio.
Excellent.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Structure.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's structure across across everything, just to create some, and not limiting boundaries, but to develop a structure to work within, because entrepreneurs can so be out of the box that it becomes detrimental. Yeah. So I know it may give somebody hives to think structure, but it can actually be a key.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growasmallbusiness.com.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
So I had been very resistant to any sort of recruiting support, but I have found that it was worth it to hire recruiters for certain key roles within the organization. That they're experts, right? They're experts in that space. They know the right questions to ask me, and they know how to represent me to the prospect or the candidate. And when I get along with a lot of people, and I am, if you know the book Strength Finders, I always carry it with me, right? Yep. So one of my top 5 strengths is woo, winning people over. But the issue is that I'm fascinated, I'm curious about people, and I just love meeting people. But when I did the primary interviews, like, I would fall in love with people, and then I would make bad decisions. So for me, having somebody that looks at it in a structured, systematic way, where I have the final 3 candidates, and then I could woo away and figure out. And very often I'm like, I want to hire all 3 of them, right? But at least somebody else has protected me from just yourself. Falling in love with people. Yeah. Exactly.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Ooh, well, one is to decide what your culture is. That's the first thing. And to repeat it for yourself, because inherently what I have learned is that the culture is an extension of who you are.
Yeah.
And you have these subconscious rules that are no-brainers for you, but if you don't consistently communicate them, then the rest of the team doesn't realize that these are the core cultural pillars. Now, if you have them upon hiring people and you've communicated it in the beginning, then they have an awareness. But then is it just something that you say when you hire somebody and then you don't continue it, right? So one of our cultural pillars is the spirit of continuous improvement. And I say it all the time, and I even say it to our clients. I said, our culture is a spirit of continuous improvement, which means if we mess up, we're always looking at how to improve it. And if it's great, we say, can it be better? It doesn't have to be, but can it be? And it kind of leads to transparent communication. That's one of our other cultural pillars, to be able to feel like you can communicate transparently, but it's also respectful. So when you have those things settled in, then making sure that you repeat it, or you give somebody an accolade and a compliment for doing something that is in alignment with the cultural pillar, I think it helps. And there's a lot more for me to learn from there, but I feel like that has been a major change.
Yeah, interesting. We've just reset our core values, and continuous improvement is one of the new ones. It's very important to us for our own professional development to keep going, and also for the people who are out there to help and serve. Yeah, it's lifelong learners.
Absolutely. And we tell our clients that it's important to us as well, because when you're analyzing things, then if you have that spirit of continuous improvement, then you're not taking a failure as a failure. You're not taking bad numbers as a failure. You're taking it as an opportunity to learn and then move forward more quickly. And so I even found that with a Ketchword client, right? When they didn't get their 25% even, well, let's look at the spirit of continuous improvement. What could change to make that better.
Yep.
And those are the people we prefer to work with.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Not very well. Hey, you want me to be honest, right?
Yep.
Awareness, hiring a coach to help me with balance. Actually, I have 2 people that help me, one with my energetic balance and another that is more structurally balanced and reminds me to take care of myself and such. And then also knowing by me sharing with my husband that I acknowledge that this is something that is difficult for me, I give him permission to help me be balanced. And even though, and then I say, but by the way, I'll probably be crabby about it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I'm gonna like you reminding me that I should be working out. I will probably say, "Why are you calling me fat?" But just know that in my heart, I actually appreciate it.
Yeah.
So no, balance is very, 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 very difficult.
Yeah, especially when you love what you do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Shitloads.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, constantly. Not only folks that I know more than I do about a particular thing, even folks that maybe do what I do, even hiring people that are marketing experts, but being able to get their perspective on something is important. But the personal development aspect of it was kind of interesting when I finally realized, I don't remember when it was, but when I finally realized that my personal development was a business expense, because if I'm developing, then my business is doing better.
Yep.
And that it's all interconnected. It wasn't this parallel thing. So it's a constant thing, but lots.
And you've had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yes, many, but it took me too long. My first coach was probably around 10 years into my business, maybe 9 years into my business.
Yeah.
And that's where I started really seeing the major differences. That's also when I was going through a lot of just changes and such with the business. And my first coach was actually a marketing coach, which was interesting because that was my jam. But I felt like I couldn't think clearly for myself. I could do it for others, but for myself, it was just a mess.
Yep. And do you have a board of directors or advisors?
No, not yet. And I desire that. I do desire that.
All right, Wanda, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Keeping your spirit up, keeping positive when things can get really, really negative. And I've been in those situations where, I'm not talking about toxic positivity, not talking about that, just ignoring the rest, but still knowing that you'll come out of it in the end. And sometimes it's hard to believe that.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Think and Grow Rich.
Napoleon Hill?
Napoleon Hill, yes.
Yeah, great book.
Absolutely.
Great book.
I love it.
Written in the 30s, was it around
1928, I believe.
Yeah, that's it. Around the
I'm a little bit of a nerd. I have I'll show you. Oh, sorry, I'll show you this.
just before the
not only
the Great Depression, wasn't it? Around then.
Yes. So I have the book, and then my husband, who is very innovative, he bought a book and then he emptied it out and he made a little purse for me with the book. So yes, I'm a big nerd about Think and Grow Rich.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development? That's
a good question. It's tough. Recently, I've gone in a little bit of a hole. From a money perspective, I like Profit First Nation. They really teach you about putting owner's pay and profit as a priority, which is very interesting because it seems like a dirty word to say profit, but very often we're working and not paying ourselves well, or potentially not paying ourselves at all when we're in a transition point. And so for me, just learning about that, not only recognizing that that there are a lot of people that have made those decisions and that there's a clear way to get out of that. So that's one that's just popping out of my head right now.
One tool you'd recommend to grow a small business? You can't say your own.
Oh, darn. One tool I would recommend. See, if you have a team, Oh boy. It depends if you have a team or if you're by yourself. If you have a team, ClickUp has been a really great tool for us. And I have somebody on my team that she's just
Is that
a
like
wizard.
Is that like a project management tool like Monday.com?
Yeah, it's like a project management tool, task management altogether. It has chat in it, and you can create workflows and such. And so I didn't realize, I just thought of it as an electronic task list, and it has so many more capabilities. So that's a new one that otherwise I was going to say Slack. Slack has been very valuable for us for team communication.
Right, Wanda, finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 17 years ago?
Oh, pick one thing.
Yeah, great advice.
Pick one thing.
If everything's a priority, nothing is.
And I would have ignored myself anyway. But
well, thanks very much for your time today. I've really had a lot of fun chatting with you. I think the audience got a lot of value out of what you shared with us. A really interesting journey, ups and downs there, but congratulations on the growth and everything you're doing. And I'm definitely going to be checking out Ketchwords myself when I get back to speaking, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And for our audience, we would greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.